This is Duke University.
I'd like to thank Anne and Ralph for inviting me here. One thing that this union has done for me in many ways is introduce me to more people from my own university than ever I would have imagined. So I met more people in the last year in different departments and different places than I did in the previous 6. So it is, I would say, one of the first things I really appreciate. They told you that I'm going to talk a little bit about faculty empowerment. I sort of look very little at the big picture. We have to sort of face the Trump thing a little bit, but I decided to keep it sort of happy and tell you what we did, and hopefully, will help guide us all in the next maybe only a few years. Okay, so Ralph wrote to us. This had been organized before the Brave New World, or whatever you want to call it, happened, and we were all, at least I personally was, in a much more optimistic space, right? So, and it was easier, even though we knew what was going on in the world, we felt that there was a chance our voice would be heard, maybe, right? Some of us. So in the grand picture, yes, this is what's happening. This is the person that Trump wants to appoint as our labor secretary, someone who's clearly not interested in labor in any way except the act of crushing it, really. This is some of the headlines you'll see, right? With all eyes on Trump, Republicans are planning to break unions for good, right? This is a hard thing to wake up to, among the other things as well, right? Where Secretary of Labor nominee stands on employment and jobs, basically, he stands on that employers should be allowed to do what they want and when they want to do it. But again, I'm going to talk today about Faculty Forward and how those of us who do have some power in a union now, how that happened and how organizing comes together. Hopefully, I gave this talk in September, a similar talk, at App State University, and it was much more like all about optimism, even though North Carolina, is a so-called right-to-work state. I was trying to encourage them with Faculty Forward that even if you can't collectively bargain, there's a lot of things you can do. I still believe that, and I definitely believe that coming together and resisting is the only way forward. But, okay, so let's talk a little bit about how our union started. Now, I was not involved from the very, very beginning, so I got some of my information from other people. And what happened was that there were some language professors, and they were unhappy. We all had this feeling, and I think everybody at every level in every university has felt this, but we certainly feel that we had no voice in the university, that nobody was listening to us, and despite the fact that we were teaching thousands and thousands of undergrads, between all of us, that we didn't know anything about why curriculum changes were made, why anything happened, who was hired, who was fired, how contracts were decided. It all seemed at least to be random at first. So, and maybe still does. But this group got together. They knew that Faculty Forward, SDIU, was organizing people in North Carolina. There were some grad students here contacted the grad students over at UNC Chapel Hill, and they met at Mad Hatter's, our little cafe right here near East Campus, and they said, what can we do to the organizer, to the SDIU organizer? And he basically said, well, why don't you try a town hall meeting? Invite everybody. They came up with the idea of Duke teaching first, and there's some people in the audience who can correct me if I'm not getting the facts straight. I did go to the first town hall meeting that was organized by Duke Teaching First. Some people spoke and sort of reiterated that it wasn't just in our case, the language department, it was happening across all departments. People felt that they had no voice and they didn't know who was being hired, who was being fired, and those kinds of things. So I think that's the first step in like realizing you're not alone. So they got together and they decided, have a town hall meeting, also write to deans and provosts and tell them collectively what the issues are, right? And so they did that around April, and they wrote many letters, got signatures, people to sign up, and waited the entire summer and did not get any response from the administration in any shape or form. Several tenured faculty did come out on side and tried to help. That is certainly true. But as a general, my general understanding is that the administration had no answer. So they met up again in September with the labor organizer and said, what's next? And he said, really, your next recourse is to form a union. So that was last September, not the previous September. Yes, 15th, thank you. Okay, so that's around the time when I became involved. They had decided that they wanted to form this union. This is not I couldn't find a copy of the actual card that we signed, but it was similar to this one. So how did I become involved? Again, those of you who have organized grassroots, you know the story very well, right? So a friend invited me for a cup of coffee, so a colleague that I had some relationship with and I knew a little bit because I think I taught in the room right after him, so we would see each other. But he was in Italian. So he had a conversation with me, took me out for a coffee, and said, hey, do you want to join a union? And as the daughter of a police officer and the sister of a corrections officer in New York, I had a pretty good sympathetic feeling to unions. Not perfect, but I certainly knew that my father, the police officer, was in New York, was going to make a pension of the likes of which I would never ever see as a university professor. So I thought, well, it can't hurt, right? I definitely was ready to sign the card that day, but I was not at all ready to come out publicly. I was really scared. Fear is a very important motivating factor. The employer uses this typically, right? And most employers, depend on this fear, and it's hard to come out. One of my colleagues who is gay likened it to actually coming out. He said, it's like coming out of the closet. Once you do, you feel better, but it's scary at first. That was his words, not mine. But so in order to really come out publicly, I met up with another union rep, and she convinced me to join the organizing committee. And so that's when my life took the craziest turn ever. If you know, I teach 3 classes a semester. I have 2 kids. I have a husband who works 70 hours. My schedule was already like over the top as it was. So I sort of couldn't believe I was doing it at the time. Fortunately, I had some grandparents who were willing to do school pickups and things. So just a little background. There's plenty more. But just this is the kind of information that we knew that SDIU had had some success with faculty organizations. So these are some of the ones that they have more recently. Southern California, Loyola, Northwestern, Boston, Duke, of course, now, Ithaca, Minnesota College of Art and Design. These are, Duke was a different, because it was one of the first in a right-to-work state. When anyone can come up with a much better name of a right-to-work, I'm totally in for that. So Duke was sort of a big win in that sense, but we'll talk a little bit about the process. So I don't want to bore anybody. I'm just going to tell you what I learned, because as I said, I came from a family involved in unions, but I had no idea what it meant to form a union. So first thing you do, I was looking for something else and I found this slide and I thought, this is it. Okay, so first you show interest, then the National Labor Relations Board gets 30% of the employees to sign these authorization cards, which I had signed in Mad Hatter. Then they file a petition, and then they set an election, and the employer fights each step of this, as Duke did, And even the election date can get contentious, Even how you vote is contentious. It's a fascinating process. I'm so glad I went through it. I wish we never had to in many ways, but I feel like I've learned so much about it. And then they have the election. You go to the labor board, which I got to do, and then you decide that you want to, vote yes, and you start your negotiations. And that's where we are right now. So I want to talk a little bit about how we got there, though. This was the really important part. And I can't stress enough that even though I'm here talking, I am just one small link of how many people were involved in this process. There were so many people who did so many more things on a daily basis. I did my part, I did my share, I heart, but even everybody worked tirelessly. Like in the people in union, we had other people who knew that they were never going to be part of the union, tenure track, tenured professors who helped us along the way as well. But one of the things that we did really well, again, not me personally, but was a social media campaign. And I think they're doing it as even better on a more serious level for the graduate students. But I'd like to show you a video that they made. Maybe some of you have seen it, but it is an amazing video. I think really gets the point of why we needed this union.
Did you know that more than 40% of Duke's teaching faculty are not tenured track professors?
What does that mean?
Isn't everyone who teaches a professor?
Well, what are they?
A lot of us are contract workers. What if I were to tell you that I don't know if I'll have a job from one semester to the next?
I don't get considered for permanent appointments.
Or that a lot of us don't get health insurance.
I could have my classes canceled last minute, leaving me without an income for the semester.
Can you say stressed out?
Our work environment is our students' learning environment. Does that sound like the best it could be?
So who can you talk to about fixing that?
Now, this isn't just a problem at Duke. This is a problem at universities all over the country.
More and more, universities are turning to temporary workers.
They're cheap, expendable, and can't really complain because who would listen?
But is that the best we can do?
Is this the best for me and my education?
Is this what I'm paying for?
Isn't it time to rethink this system?
For the good of both students and instructors.
Duke is a leader in so many areas. We could become a national model
by tackling this issue head on.
Together, we can make our voices heard and get a seat at the table.
To discuss with administrators better solutions that are fair to everyone.
We love what we do, and by joining together, we can make sure the teaching at the university is sustainable, equitable, and gives students the best experience they can have.
I am Duke Teaching First.
I am Duke Teaching First.
I support Duke Teaching First.
We are Duke Teaching First. We are voting yes.
Ready to join us?
It's such a great video. As you can see, I had nothing to do. I think I'm one of the voices in the end shouting, "We voted yes." So you can see this was very much a group effort, right? And you can see some familiar faces maybe over here. But yes, so it was, we had a video editor on our team, so that it really helped, as you can see. But of course the social media was important, and again, as you all know, those face-to-face conversations are also invaluable. We also, did a lot of work, and some of this seems kind of like run-of-the-mill now that we've all been like up in arms and protesting Trump. But this is and this is what was happening at Duke even before. There was a student takeover of the Allen Building. These students were fighting for the workers here at Duke. Most of the workers in the cafeterias would get a fair wage. They were asking for $15 an hour, and most of them were currently making $10. Of course, there's many levels. Some of them are unionized. Duke gets rid of a lot of the unionized by calling them temporary workers. These students did at least achieve $12 for many of the workers, not all for the full-time and the part-time, but I really admired them. So we came out, the union folks, we came out and tried to support them the best we could. The administration wouldn't actually let anybody in the Allen Building. That's where the deans are, and that's the building that they occupied. But we tried our best at least to be out there. We wanted to, bring them food and other things, but we weren't allowed to do that. One of them is my ex-student as well. So I couldn't be prouder. But so there was lots of community organization. There were lots of rallies at Duke trying to bring awareness to the campaign. And then, of course, we had the vote count. That was around March. You can see this all happened fairly quickly. I was lucky enough to get to the vote. It was around spring break, so I think we had the day off. Lots of social media pictures of us mailing in our ballots and trying to get our point across. So don't let anyone ever tell you that we weren't happy about this union. That was the vote count, right? And people really wanted this. I was there, as I said, along with my colleagues, actually tallying the votes, so it's a very long process. They pick each one out of the envelope. I sat next to Kyle Kavanaugh. If you know, he's the director of communications or dean of something here at Duke, but he deals a lot with this stuff. So you have to tally the votes of the other side. So my job was to tally the no votes, and his job was to tally the yes votes. So it was a wonderful moment in my life when I put my pencil down and just watched him tally all the votes, right? And I could see the look on his face, like how surprised he was. And he's actually the one in charge of negotiations with us now. So, but I really want to get that point across as the grad students organize, is that we really, really wanted this. No one was, this is an amazing win, right? Okay, so there was lots of media attention. There was, of course, all in the News and Observer, our local paper. Marketplace interviewed me. That's an NPR show, I'm sure you all know. I encourage you to listen to it if you're interested. I thought it was very biased, and I'm going to show you a little bit of it. Did you see it? This is part of the written transcript. So, not to say there I am, but so here, as you can see, I was just asked what my opinion about the union was, and this was a good lesson to anybody who deals with the media, even if it's NPR and you think they're on my side, they aren't. So like, I said that this union was formed because we needed people to listen to us. And I said that, having a voice, this was really important. I'm not going to pretend that it was never about money, and it's not about money, of course. But really, at the end of it, like, if people had listened to us, we wouldn't have felt such a need to form a union. So this, now being Marketplace, I understand it's a business story, but they framed it in the picture that somehow we, if we were asking for more money, and if you know the small amounts of money we're really asking for is like 0.01% of Duke's budget, right? Duke, a school with a $7 billion endowment, they were proposing on Marketplace that somehow paying us more, would I quote, here, sorry, down I guess a little. I believe it's going to end up doing more damage than good, right? Or there'll be less money for scholarships for poor students, right? All to pay us a living wage. Right? Universities have scarce resources, which is true in some universities, don't get me wrong, but it is not true in this university, as we all know, right? So this, you know, I was furious for weeks, as you might imagine, after this interview. But it's a good lesson, right, that you never know how your point is going to be framed. Of course, the Indie here, another paper, did a great job, and if you are interested, it does give like a very good history of unionization, and it talks certainly about us. They interviewed us. They came to the vote count with us. It was really, really in-depth. It's one I have saved, the hard copy. Okay, so it's a lot of hard work organizing a union. I don't regret it, but we did celebrate. We did have a good time, so always focus on the good as well, right? You will meet people. As I said, I've met people at Duke I never would have met. I've spent more time with my colleagues than I ever had before, not just the ones in Spanish, right, because we were a very kind of closed-in program. So I got to meet and really like-minded people. You know, in times of crisis, being around like-minded people is really helpful for your morale in general. So I highly recommend that. Not just your echo chamber, of course, but people who want to fight for the same goals. Okay, just real quick, I'm not sure where I am on. Oh, no, I'm good on time. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Faculty Forward, which is SDIU's branch of faculty networks for university professors, right? Faculty Forward has a pretty big presence considering in North Carolina. Here's a town hall that we organize with local politicians. Again, this is stuff that you can do even if you don't have collective bargaining. You can hold politicians accountable. Most of the ones we invited, all the local politicians, I believe only the Democrats showed up, but still it was a chance to say to them, again, this was all pre-Trump, and you know, okay, you say you believe in education, where's the money, right? What are you going to do about it? And it was a good discussion on those kinds of issues. So it's not just about a union. It's not just about getting more money for us. It's about the broad picture of what it means for the university. Just some ways you can get in touch if you're interested in Faculty Forward. I highly recommend. If you're not friends with them on Facebook or on Twitter, I recommend you do. They post lots of great articles. So much of it is about community building. For me, as a person, it's really sort of awakened me to everything else, right? I was definitely in my own little bubble of motherhood and professorhood and whatever. So I thank the SDIU and Faculty Forward for not just making me focus on my own problems, but realizing the big picture as well. And so here we are last February, and this march is coming up again. This is a march, the HK on J, which is in February, organized by the NAACP. It's not about politicians, it's about issues. Everybody goes there. Similar to the Women's March, right? Everybody went there with their own idea, legalize weed, you name it. And there were people marching, homemade signs and stuff. And this was last February, right? I can't imagine what it's going to be this February. I'm kind of excited about what's going to happen. So this has been going on since 2006. It says there's 125 plus units of North Carolina NAACP, right? And this was pre-Trump, so I expect more. This is also related, if you know about the Moral Monday movement here in North Carolina, Reverend Barber is involved fully in this and does talk at this march. And yes, is it next Saturday? Yes. Go, drop everything, and we'll be there too, if anyone wants to march with Faculty Forward. Okay, so as I said, this took a lot out of me into my world, into North Carolina, community connections with North Carolina that I hadn't made, such as the HK on J. Also, I was lucky enough to go to the SDIU conference in Detroit, an amazing affair. If you're used to academic conferences, it was noisy and loud and people yelling and holding signs and wearing t-shirts. It's nothing like I ever expected it to be, in a good way. I also found out, this was my search to find out if I really wanted to be a member of SDIU, really important to me. So I looked at the issues that they were concerned about, and they were the same ones that we're talking about. And in my problem was that I was just sitting here in my comfy desk, in my comfy chair. So they were going out and doing something about it, and that's what encouraged me to do the same. So talking about segregation, talking about citizen rights, all sorts of were undocumented, and of course the Fight for 15. So I also went to the Fight for 15. We took a whole bunch of people from Faculty Forward to Richmond, Virginia to march for Fight for 15, right? It's not just fast food workers, it's healthcare workers, it's everyone who deserves a living wage. You can't live on $7.50 an hour or whatever, right? So it's an incredible experience to hear this stories of the people. I'm over there. I hate photos of myself, but I thought it was worth ask me anything. Ask me about the Hillary supporters, whatever you want about the SDIU and Hillary. Also, this is more stuff from the Fight for 15 in Richmond. Signs in Spanish. As a Spanish professor, this warms my little heart, right? We defend $15 and citizenship. These are all things that, again, I preached, but I didn't know where. The ones in the background are from Richmond. The one in the front is from the Day of Disruption, November 29th, that was organized by the SDIU for the Fight for 15. We were standing the McDonald's on Roxborough, I believe it was. So you can see there's a great intersection and a great moment for me personally to see, to be involved in something else. Was it the 29th? Yeah. Okay, so presently at Duke, we're going through negotiations. I haven't been as present. I was there at the first one, and I've been there sprinkled throughout. There's lots of other people who know, but you can ask me any questions about how negotiations are going. We have a rep from SDIU, and it's open to anybody who's in the bargaining unit and wants to go. I highly recommend you do. We started out with a bargaining survey. Again, I want to really emphasize that it's not just the SDIU, it's us, it's the professors in the unit who design the materials, who talk this bargaining survey. I helped design with another one of my colleagues, Chris, because we knew the issues, right? SDIU brings us together, tells us how to organize, but we're the ones who know what's going on at Duke. I wouldn't show it to you, but just ask all sorts of questions, like what are your biggest concerns? Do you have health insurance? Some of the people in the bargaining unit did not have health insurance. And how do you feel about parking? Like, it was everything we thought that people might wanted to tell somebody about and never gotten the chance. Okay? And as you probably know, the grad students are about to vote or voting in the and I'm not exactly sure where they are, but they're very close to voting. That would be a huge win, I believe, and I know that a lot of people work with grad students. People who run labs have told me that they would really like this to happen, that they think that sometimes the grad students don't know their role and don't know what time they should be spending in the lab and what time they should be doing their research and how. So they think that actually organizing the union will make everybody's life easier. Am I ready? I'm done, so you can ask me questions. Also, what about the future? Ralph sent me this article the other day about the Fight for 15 organizing undergraduate student workers, which is something maybe we haven't thought about yet as well. So thank you very much.
Produced by Duke University, online at duke.edu.